And I would like to ask Arjan Sterken from Reykjavik University in Nijmegen, the Netherlands, PhD student.
Yeah. All right. Good morning, everyone. Today I will be talking to you about a part of my PhD research concerning the so-called nåloupers or revenants in Groningen folklore from the north of the Netherlands. And especially, I will be focusing on how these beings utilize their environment, or better, how they are perhaps determined by their environments. Very schematically, you can think of different ways how supernatural, or I call them extrasocial beings, I won't be explaining that, you can ask about that later, how these kind of extrasocial beings are related to our environment. The first option is quite clearly the extrasocial being itself has a very clear identity which influences how the environment is perceived. That's option one. Option two is rather that the location has kind of an overbearing sense of identity or meaning that is then kind of pushed onto the extrasocial being inhabiting that environment. So you have those two as options, and of course, as scholars, we tend to prefer this one, right? This kind of like meaning is mutually constitutive. So the environment has a certain meaning, and that extrasocial being has a certain meaning, and those influence each other. That is, I think, the more scholarly accepted opinion on this. So I'm going to go against that. I think, actually, in my case study, the environment has way more to say about the meaning of these revenants, of these people returning after death, than those returning after death do on their environment. And I'm going to argue for that during this lecture. So my PhD research deals with the ambiguity of extra-social beings, the way they are ambiguous, the way we can hardly tie them down in different ways. I created a model about this ambiguity based on ideal types. I won't be going in full detail here, but you can ask about that later. The ways how ambiguity actually arises based on kind of like a positive and a negatively evaluated extra-social being. That model I now test on two different case studies. One are the yakshas from India, and the other are the so-called nåloupers from Groningen in the Saxon areas. This is what the model looks like. And this model deals with like 5 different dimensions in which ambiguity plays a factor, which are ontology, behavior, allegiance, appearance, and then for us, really interesting for today, location. When a certain extra-social being is positively evaluated, they kind of like fit in with their environment. They often learn and they live like in a positively ascribed environment and often close to human habitation. If they are negatively evaluated, if people don't like them, they are often located far away from humans or at the closest near the borders of human settlements. And often their location is also negatively ascribed. All right, so this is the dimension we will be looking at today. These nåloupers. This is the Saxon term for the revenant, people who return after death. In my research, I focus on the Groningen region in the Netherlands, which is to the north, quite close to the German border. And I specifically look at 20th century folklore collections. The Netherlands started collecting folklore quite late, most of it actually after the Second World War. So for my research, 3 collections are really interesting: Huizenga-Onnekus, Wever, and Jaarsma. Today, I will be specifically taking examples from the Huizenga-Onnekus collection, which is not without troubles. It's not unproblematic, this collection. It's the way we have it right now is is to some extent edited. And the big problem is we don't know to what extent exactly. We know that it is edited, but not to what extent. Somehow the language has been changed sometimes. So more study needs to be done as to the validity of the collection as we have it now. This is the collection I'll be looking at. And this collection the big part of this collection is written in and was spoken in the Saxon language, Niederdeutsch, Plattdeutsch, Neder-Saxisch, which is a language continuing spoken in parts of the Netherlands, parts of northern Germany, sometimes even dipping over the Denmarkian border, and in the past also expanding into Poland and such. And the specific area we're talking about right now is really kind of at the left top there. All right. Okay, so the nåloupers, as we find them in these collections, when you look at Waskell's definition of ghostly activity, you find them as quite often intelligent characters who can respond to their environment and respond to human agents within that environment. Sometimes they're also residual, meaning that they don't interact with their environment. They just kind of like in an anniversary haunting. They just walk around, retrace the steps they did the moments before their death. Also these nåloupers always appear in human form. I have not found true animal apparitions of the nålouper. And sometimes they also exhibit poltergeist activity. And quite interestingly, this is the drawing made by an artist of these nåloupers, which does not represent the way these nåloupers seem to be depicted in these folk tales. The nåloupers really appear as if, just as regular human beings, hardly distinguishable from their living counterpart. Okay, but let's first talk a bit before we really jump into some examples. Talk about kind of the general function of the nålouper, and here I think this is what I kind of generated looking at their ambiguity. What I kind of see happening with these nåloupers is that a nålouper who returns after death somehow breaks with the natural order, because dead people are supposed to remain resting in their graves. They're supposed to stay in their graves and not walk the earth again. Big problem? They do. And that is a problem that's often caused by some kind of break in the social order. Some kind of social flaw has entered the community, has entered the system. And so what I suspect is happening here is that these natural order and the social order are seen as parallels of each other. One breaks, the social order, then the other breaks, the natural order. In order to fix this problem, in order to make the nålouper disappear, one has to reinstate the social order, that really fix the flaw in the social problem that's created, then the natural order is restored and the nålouper rests again. These kind of social flaws, these kind of break in social order that you find are kind of the common things that you often find in literature about ghostly hauntings. Violence and murder is a big cause for a nålouper to return. Theft, lies or broken promises, wrong kind of labor. In the Netherlands, that often is about labor done on, for example, like holidays, like Catholic holidays or like Sundays. The wrong kind of mourning the deceased too long causes a nålouper to appear as well, and the wrong kind of burial. If someone is buried in the wrong way or not like next to their partner or not according to their wishes, they can also return. And so with these kind of breaks in social order, the nålouper will appear asking for a correction. This is often what happens, but there is one very interesting phenomenon here when looking at this material, that there is especially an urgent need to fix this when the nålouper is nearby human communities. When they're far away, there's hardly any need to fix this social order. So let's look at some examples here. All right, so needs to fix when this nålouper is nearby. So there's the story from the collection. This collection is from before the Second World War, the 1920s and 1930s, but the stories have only been published in the 1980s and 1990s. So that explains the dates here. Old Lammegien of Witte Wierum died. Suddenly, a woman stood there in the middle of the road wearing a white cap. Both women saw that it was their sister, the self-same one they had buried that same night. Not long after, others testified that their sister returned. On the farmstead in Witte Wierum, they all saw her. So on the farmstead, really in the middle of human settlement. She came from the attached barn, walked through the stone neck hallway, then through the wooden corridor until she reached the living room. So to kind of showcase what that looks like. So this is a kind of a typical Groningen farm. So the big building is the barn area, which is, well, not frequently inhabited, but really a place of labor. And then there's kind of this connecting area, which then leads to the place where the farmer and his family live. So yeah, there's kind of like this idea of moving from the labor space more towards the domestic space. And this is also the track that this ghost is taking, starting in the labor area, then moving forwards to the domesticated area. She was dressed in all black, wearing a white cap like she did when she was alive, really looking like the human living counterpart. One night, people spotted her arrival. When she was still in the attached barn, they summoned the minister, the Protestant clergy. Then the minister also moved up front and asked her what she wished. She told him her husband had been a drunkard. Like many farmers on that day, he promised her on her deathbed to quit. He never did. After that, he did quit drinking. And now all was all right. And the insinuation is, after this, the noaloper did not return. This noaloper really starts to haunt living spaces, starts to really kind of house area, really residential spaces, therefore needs to be fixed. However, when the ghost is far away, there is no need to be fixed. No need for a fixture of the social order. Once upon a time, there was a minister who was a drunkard. Eventually, he was at his wits' end. He started wandering further and further away, and when he reached the old river of Termunten, the pitiful man drowned himself. It didn't take long before people saw him behind the old graveyard, where in his suffering he walked into the water. The old graveyard, meaning in this case a graveyard that's no longer in use, a graveyard that is there but is not really visited. No new plots are being dug, no people are being buried there any longer. It's a place that's quite desolate, not like a lot of Dutch landscapes, not void of human activity, but especially in the Dutch context, really considered to be a non-inhabited space, not a really substantial community space. But yes. So therefore, this minister can haunt there without a need of resolution. All right, but sometimes, even if there seems to be a need for resolution, if one of these noalopers is haunting a community area, and then still a fix is not possible. This often has to do with murder. A murder is often not, people are unable to especially, restore the social order if a murder has been committed. Then the normal way of restoring it is simply not possible. Then other fixes are needed. So you can either change up the local environment by fixing up a building, or banish the haunter, the noaloper, to one of these wild areas. So what this looks like, for example, we have a story here. Frans was an innkeeper in Zoutkamp and made a good living, but he could not temper his desire for more. One late evening, an unfamiliar captain arrived, requesting accommodation. In appearance, it was a rich man, and he also claimed to carry a lot of money. That would be his doom. Frans killed that man, his own guest, that selfsame night. He also stacked him up on his cart and drove him to the Uiterlanden, the Uitland, really kind of an area considered outside of human community. He was buried outside the sea dike. Really, this is prime wild area here in Groningen. No one ever noticed anything. However, every night, Frans walks along the sea dike, where he had buried that man. And even after returning, when the noaloper of Frans returns to his inn, this Frans was still not at ease. And he had to count the money that he stole in the upstairs room until he broke even. But he never finished his job before the morning crowing of the rooster. So Frans kept haunting that area until later that building was renovated. And then the haunting stopped. We also know this from comparative cases in New York, for example, where the same kind of thing happens. A haunting can stop when the building is restored or rebuilt in some fashion. And other times, you really have to just banish this noaloper. In Molenrijn near Kloosterburen, a farmer used to live who abused his stepson. When the farmer died and the funeral procession carried off to Kloosterburen, Catholic area in this case, the people saw him sitting in front of his attic window. He was keeping an eye out in order to see whether everything went all right. They could not get rid of him. Whenever his family came home after visiting others, stuff was thrown around them. Doors were always thrown open. He truly was a poltergeist. After a while, the family got fed up and with this spectacle, and they summoned a priest. He had to banish the farmer. That took a lot of effort, for the ghost didn't want to leave. And eventually, it was banished to the Wiede Lake near the dock at the Westerweg. Cultivated area, definitely. Really like a lot of Dutch spaces, but still uninhabited. Really a place where this noaloper was not bothering anyone that much. And that is how they got rid of it. All right. So to conclude, I think that here in these kind of stories, the environment has quite a bigger imprint on how these noalopers are interpreted. Yeah, in general, the noaloper links the natural and social order. By fixing the social order, the natural order is fixed, the noaloper stops haunting. But the noaloper in a community area, and especially in houses, so not just like any kind of community area, but especially houses really need to be resolved. A noaloper in the wilderness is tolerated, meaning that depending on the location, the noaloper becomes more or less tolerated or not. For those of you who are interested in some of my publications on this, you can see them here on the right-hand side. But for now, my dear people, thank you very much.